Hi guys, this is Seth Christensen with the Got Any Cows podcast. 20 years ago, I was an 11-year-old kid with 2 bucket calves. Today, we have sent genetics from our company to 40 of the 50 states and 12 countries around the world. I still learn more every day, and I invite you to learn along with me. Well, we're sitting here in the basement of the Intercontinental, Kansas City at the Plaza, waiting for a convention to start tomorrow, and Jim has humored me to come down and join me on this episode of the Got Any Cows podcast. Jim, if you would, do us a favor and just kind of introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit of your story.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Jim Dyer, and from Fort Davis, Texas. We're about halfway between El Paso and Midland, Odessa, and we're just about south of the Interstate 10, where 10 and 20 come together. We're about 45 miles south of that. So where I live is like a mile high in elevation. The Rockies kind of come out of Colorado and New Mexico and they go through the little portion of West Texas. So my house is a mile high in elevation, and then we've got a mountain behind the house. It's 8,380 feet, second highest mountain in Texas. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, and the Rockies run right on down into Mexico, and so.
That's
so, yeah.
interesting. You're actually even higher right there in Texas than what we are in Idaho, right where my ranch is. And now there's other places higher in Idaho, but
sure.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that where you were born and raised, Jim? Is that home throughout your life?
No, I was actually raised, or I was born between Baird and Albany. My great-great-granddad was a trail boss on the Chisholm Trail, and
oh, really?
Wow. They drove cattle out of Mexico up into Kansas, and he really thought the best ranching country along the trail was there at Ballinger, which is just east of San Angelo. But by the time he got his money saved up and got back there, they'd already broke it up and started farming it. So the next country that he liked the best along the trail was between Baird and Albany, and so that's where he settled. And in fact, where my mom and dad were living when I was born was they used to sell supplies to the trail drives in that house.
Serious?
Yeah.
That's like real cowboy stuff,
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah.
That's not halfway. That's awesome.
Yeah. So and I think there's a lot of Dyers came from Tennessee. There's a Dyersburg, Tennessee, and my dad had gone back there one time, and so I guess I think we're Irish, and maybe it came from Tennessee at one time.
Interesting. So you were born and raised up there towards Albany, or in that part of the world?
Albany, yeah. Well, between Baird and Albany, in Callahan County. It's just east of Abilene, Texas.
Okay,
it's about 20 miles east of Abilene.
Gotcha.
And the way we ended up in Alpine is in Saul Ross. My mom and dad both went to school at Saul Ross, and I think 49 through 51 or 2, and they met out there and got married. And then my dad went back to Baird. He was helping run the ranch there at Baird, and they're east of Abilene. And then he got involved in a sale barn and with a bunch of his buddies, college buddies and all, and it kind of went south. And so he kind of had to start all over again. And he had a bigger ranch leased out there south of Alpine, and so he knew that he could never pay that debt back on just such a small place there at Baird. So that's kind of how he started, and he started trading cattle, and they had the 2-way radios, and he had an El Camino. I can remember that because we moved to Alpine when I was in the first grade, and I thought that's pretty neat. He had a walkie-talkie radio, and whenever he'd hear somebody was selling their calves or something, he said, "Well, what about your cows? Have you got them sold, your cull cows and stuff like that?" And then he formed a partnership with a guy that had a feedlot up here in Kansas, and it was Cooper and Young, and so he ended up buying cattle from all the other ranchers around there and sending them up here to Kansas. And
really?
So he started trading cattle, eventually was able to pay the debt back, and then he started trading land and stuff. I guess it was about 1965, because we lived in Alpine when I first moved away from Baird, and I started first grade there in Alpine. And, everybody's talking about the screwworms coming back right now. We'll see. When I was, I guess I was probably 8 or 9 years old. In the summertime, we had a guy that lived in a trailer house there. We had a ranch lease, my dad did, south of Alpine. So in the summer, they would take me down there and leave me down there with that cowboy, and
Oh,
we rode
serious?
every day. We'd go to a different pasture every day, and I was too little.
How old were you?
I was about 8 or 9, I
And you just
guess.
spent the summer there with
Yeah, I
the,
spent the summer there, and
with the
we'd go
cowboy.
horseback every day. We had them little Mexico horses, that weren't very big. It was just right for a little kid. And so I had saddlebags on my saddle, and we'd put the screwworm medicine in my saddlebags because I was too little to rope and tie stuff down. But so every day I'd go with this cowboy, and we'd go to a different pasture every day and look for those wormies, and then he'd rope them, tie them down, and then he'd get the worm medicine out of the saddlebags, and we'd doctor them and try to collect. They had these little test tubes where you'd collect the worms, and then you'd mail them off, and then they would look at them whenever they got. I don't know where they went to A&M or where they went, but they would look at them, and then if they were the actual screwworms, well, then they would drop the sterile flies out of an airplane. They would drop them out over your ranch, and you'd find these little cardboard boxes with these sterile flies. So
Go figure.
yeah.
What does a cow look like that's actively infected? I mean, it's so far removed as far as I've never run into something actively infected with New World screwworm.
Yeah. So if there's an open wound anywhere, so you had to calve. You kind of had to calve because they would get in the navel of the baby
serious?
calf. Oh yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Any open wound, that fly would get in there and lay eggs, and then when those eggs would hatch out, it looked like a grub worm, but they're flesh eating. They just start eating flesh. You can get. What we'd do is we'd kind of get downwind. If the cattle were all around the water trough in the middle of the day or whatever, you get downwind, you could smell it. It's
Serious?
like
It is a lot like rotten meat.
rotten meat is what
Oh,
it smells
wow.
like. And so, yeah, you couldn't brand or work because if you dehorned or castrate, they'd get in there. And even when the brand would peel, you'd brand, and when the brand starts peeling, there's they
Be
get
going
in there
after that.
get in
Holy
fat.
smokes.
Yeah. So and also another deal that people don't realize, like where I lived in Callahan County, there was not any deer. I'd never seen any deer till I got out to around West Texas, out in Alpine. There was mule deer and stuff out there, but it was because the screwworms were so bad. Now we have all kinds of deer. Wealthy people come out of Fort Worth and Dallas and buy the ranches around Callahan County and have high fences, and they breed deer. But there wasn't any deer in the 60s, from 55 to 60, in there wasn't any deer in Callahan County. And like now they're all over. So,
What point did they get rid of those screwworms to be able to do that, to be able to have these other things come in?
Now, when did they do it?
Yeah, or I guess, yeah. At what point did you quit fighting screwworm? Do you remember?
It was in the late 60s or early 70s. Okay. Well, I was going to tell you that my dad had a lease on this ranch, and there was an oil man came out there and bought it. And he had just signed, I don't know why the guy selling it signed a 5-year lease with my dad. He leased it to my dad for 5 years, and then I guess the next year or 6 months later, this oil man from Midland bought it, and he wanted, he wanted us out of there, which I don't blame him. And so he paid my dad enough money for the lease that he went over to Fort Davis. It's just 22 miles north of Alpine. And so he made a down payment on a ranch over there. And he kind of started trading ranches like he was trading cattle, just kept growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger. And most of the country there, you've got to have 10 to 20,000 acres to have a big enough place, to run enough cattle to kind of justify staying in business, because it takes so many acres to run a cow.
How many acres does it take out there?
In some of the better country, it's 45 to 50 acres a cow, and then some of the country that's further west, closer to El Paso, I mean, it'll take 80 to 100 acres to run a cow up there. So it's a big country, and anyway, that's kind of where I started when we traded for that ranch, or when we made the down payment on the ranch in Fort Davis and went over there. That guy had 2,000 Angora goats and 2,000 sheep, and then my dad had always run cattle, and so that was quite an experience. I grew up, there was a big mountain there called Blue Mountain, and those goats, they would always go to the top of the mountain. We would get horseback and start pushing them. They'd all run to the top of the mountain, and then there was just one trail coming off that mountain. So we'd have somebody that would have to lead the horses back because it was too steep to ride horseback. So we had to go
Wow.
chase them afoot down the front of that mountain. So yeah, that was always well, as a kid growing up, I thought it was really neat, but after a while it lost all the being fun.
How long did you guys run the goats and the sheep in addition to the cattle?
I would say it was about 3 or 4 years. My dad, he got out of that as quick as he could. And at that country, the Davis Mountains is what they call that area. And they ran a lot of sheep and goats. And everybody, they had net wire fences. So everybody, they fought the varmints, the
coyotes
and
and
mountain
stuff.
lions and all that. But later on, people, a lot of people quit doing the sheep and goats. The price got real low, and a lot of people quit raising them. And then the coyotes and bobcats and stuff like that would just pretty well wipe you out. And the eagles were real bad too, catching
Oh,
those
really?
baby lambs. Yeah, the eagles were tough.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So your dad had run cattle. Was he running cattle in addition to the goats and sheep at that point?
Yeah, we had
And
cattle. We've always had
Always had
cattle.
the
It's
cattle,
just
and
that
then-
particular ranch, they had 2,000 goats and I don't know how many sheep, but
I don't
yeah.
know if I've ever seen 2,000 goats in one place.
Yeah,
That's a group of goats.
yeah.
So what did it look like for your dad? Your dad had been trading cattle, and then he gets to trade in some of these ranches, picks up the one that has the goats and the sheep and stuff like that. What did it look like through his career and then transitioning into you coming back to the ranch? What did that all take shape and look like?
Yeah. Yeah, it goes a lot of different directions. I don't know why it came to my mind. My dad ended up buying some stock in a bank. Back in the old days, a lot of the bankers, the way they ended up with some of the big ranches was they would loan money, and the rancher couldn't pay it off. Well, then, the bank ends up with a ranch, and some of the bigger ranches in that area ended up in the people that owned the bank. So they called my dad's loan. He had borrowed money at the Fort Davis Bank. I think he borrowed money everywhere to pay that sale barn wreck deal off. And so they called his loan, and this was in, I think, 1964 or somewhere around 63 or 64. I believe it was 64 because that's when he went on the board there at the bank in Fort Davis. So he called the guy that owned the bank, called his loan, and he was able to borrow the money at a couple other banks, and he borrowed some money from his sister and his mom and them, and was able to pay the loan back. And the guy that owned the bank, he said, "Dang, if Dyer can pay that loan off like that, so we need to put him on the board." So anyway, that's how my dad went on the board in 1964, I believe, and then it stayed in the family until, well, he just had a small portion, but whenever one of the other guys that was stockholders would die or something, my dad would buy the stock, and the old guy that actually owned the bank, he gave all his stock to an orphanage in El Paso, and my dad was good friends with the president of the bank, and so they went to El Paso and bought the bank stock back from the orphanage because they didn't have any use for bank stock. And so then my dad, I guess he became chairman of the board probably. He was chairman of the board for probably 30, 35 years. And then I guess when he was probably 75 or something like that, he kind of stepped down, and then I took his place as chairman of the board. And then I was probably chairman for about 10 or 15 years, and regulations got so bad. I know we're getting way off the subject.
Oh no, this is good stuff though, Jim. I was gonna say this is your story, and like I said, and this is unique to you. Anybody can talk about a cow or whatever else. Like this is the stuff I enjoy hearing about.
Yeah. Anyway, the regulations just kept getting worse and worse, and it seemed like they wanted to get rid of the small community banks. The government did, and especially during the Obama administration and some of the Democratic administrations. So they knew that not many ranchers or not many bankers voted for them, so they made it pretty hard.
made it pretty
hard
tough
on
to
the
do
small
that.
community banks. So in 2022 we sold out, and that was about a year before actually my dad died the same year, and
Oh really?
yeah, he was 93 when he passed away, and like I said, I told him one day, he kind of had a stroke there the last year, and he couldn't really talk, but he could understand. And I told him, I said, hey, we got the bank sold. I said, you're out of debt. His whole life dream was to be, eventually be out of debt before he passed away. And it's like one of his old college roommates told me, he said, well, your dad doesn't want to own all the land. He just wants to own what joins him. And I said, yeah, that's about right. So, yeah, at one time, I mean, we leased a lot of country, and then we owned quite a bit too, but we leased more than we owned. But at one time, we had like 350,000 acres that we were running cattle on.
Oh, man, alive.
So
that'd keep a guy busy.
Yeah. But
so at its peak, when you were all the way up to that kind of acreage, how many cows could that support on that 350,000?
Yeah, it just depended on the years. When it rained, when it would rain and we'd have extra grass, so we'd keep we'd wean our calves and put them back on grass and keep them over. And then a lot of times we were right on the Mexican border. We'd buy, Mexican steers and turn them out. So it would fluctuate. And we had 2 or 3 different partnerships. There was a partnership between my dad and my sister and I that we called Rancho Espuela Cattle Company. And then later on, as I got older, I had my own company, and then my sister and her husband did too. And so, I mean, altogether, probably the most we ever had was around 3,500 cows. So it's not, people run places that will run, 1 cow to the acre. Well, it's not like that. We're, out there where we live.
I've had people ask me, they say, so how many cows go on an acre? I'm like, so are we talking West Texas or Florida?
Yeah. Exactly right.
It's just a little different between the two.
Big difference.
Yeah. So when you're looking at your dad and trading those different ranches, and then the work he did on the board there at the Fort Davis Bank, how did how did you go from being the 9-year-old kid that was chasing the goats or treating the screwworms to coming back to the ranch and then eventually stepping into that role at the bank?
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of leads into how we were in 4-H, and we started showing steers when I was probably in Alpine. Before we moved to Fort Davis, we'd started showing steers, and they call that area the Highland Hereford area. It was all Herefords. There wasn't anything out there in the 60s but Herefords.
And is it the Highland just because it's
yeah,
high
because
elevation?
It's Highland, yeah.
Nothing to do with Highland cattle.
No.
That craze wasn't taken off just then. Yeah,
no,
right,
that was
okay.
way before that train.
Yeah.
But it was all Herefords, and then we were pretty competitive, showing steers, and then the exotics started coming in the late 60s, and like my dad really got eat up with trying to win steer shows and stuff like that. So he started buying. I mean, we bought Maine Anjous, we bought limousine, even had some Kianias and stuff like that, and crossed them. I mean, we had 7-8-year-old Hereford cows in the pasture hung up trying to have a calf out of a Charolais bull, stuff like that. So I mean, we went through some wrecks and some learning experience, but the cross we thought made the best was the Hereford limousine, because it put a red neck on those Herefords and put some red pigment around their eyes, because we get a lot of sunshine. We probably get 364 days of sunshine a year out there. So, and the Hereford would get pink eye, and then their tits, would chap too, and stuff. So
get sunburned.
The limousine, the limousine. For a long time, I thought the half limousine, half Hereford was probably about as good as mother cow as you get, similar to a black baldy. It's just a really good cow. And so we were in the limousine business we started in the late 60s, and my dad, he was on the national board during the 80s, and then I got put on the limousine board in 2000 to 2006, and back in the 80s when he was on the board, I mean, they were rocking and rolling. They were registering 60 or 70,000 limousines a year.
Really? At their peak, they got up that high?
Yeah, at their peak. Oh,
wow.
They would have their board meetings at Colorado Springs, and on the golf course, and up there in Aspen and all over. And I said, yeah. Y'all just lived high on the hog, and now when I got on the board, the registrations had gone down about 25 or 30,000. I said, y'all should have saved some of that money back a little bit, been a little wiser made some better investments. It's not going to be good all the time. Right. But anyway, yeah. I gave them a hard time about that, but met some great people in the limousine breed, and we stayed with the limousine for a long time. I guess Lars Lean, are you familiar with Lars Lean?
Yeah, yeah. Wanted to jump in and ask just a quick question there, and just one that you'd sparked talking about that Hereford limousine cross and how that worked really well for. I mean, you're in some tough country down there where you're at, and running some big wide open country. A lot of people down into there would have some ear in their cattle. What made you guys choose to go with the Hereford limousine rather than any of the many Brahman derivatives?
Well, for one reason, we were showing steers and trying to raise. He was trying to raise show steers, and so yeah, and the Bramer the disposition and all. They're better in the heat, down closer to the coast out in West Texas.
Get down into the
I
humidity.
mean, yeah, there were a lot of people that had them. Brangus cattle did real good out in my area, and there's a few. Clayton Williams comes to mind as one of the bigger Brangus breeders out there in that area, and But yeah, I guess because we were trying to raise show steers, and we there for maybe 10 or 12 years, we used to have a club calf sale.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad was real good friends with the county agent there, and in fact, when his kids and my sister and I got through showing, well, him and our county agent went in partners, and he moved back to the ranch at Baird. We still had about 2,000 acres there at Callahan County at Baird, and so we had club calves there for about 10 years. It was called the Dyer Sims Club Calf Sale.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, I apologize. I had kind of cut you off there. You were just going to talk about Laura's Lean and some of the outlets for that limousine beef.
We were real good friends with Leonard Wolf was on the board with my dad, and then I served on the board with Jerry Wolf and some of the Wolves. We were good friends with them, and I think them and a couple other guys, we were about maybe in the top 3 or 4 or 5 of producing cattle for Lars Lean, which...
Oh, really?
Yeah, Lars Lean is based in Kentucky, I believe in Lexington, Kentucky, and so they wanted them to be either select or standard. They didn't want them to be choice. It was all red meat. So we want red meat yield cattle with a lot of muscle and no fat. Back then, everybody was trying to get rid of fat.
Yeah. That was what everybody wanted. They said lean, the leaner the better.
Yeah, and
as far as marketability,
we figured that the butcher was not going to pay to trim that fat off. So you're going to be if you're a limousine or a Charolais breeder, you're going to be in the driver's seat. And it worked good for a few years, but eventually
they even called them lean limousine, in their promotions. That's what I remember seeing as a kid in high school. Is exactly. Lean limousine was how they explained it.
Yep. And so what happened? Lars Lean sold out to Myers Angus, bought them out, and so we still sold them. Yearlings for a couple of years, and we fed a lot of them. We've always fed them and took them all the way through the feedlot. But then, I don't know, it was probably in 2007 or 2008, they said that they were going to source all their meat out of South America.
Oh, really?
Said, that they really didn't.
I guess that'd be lean.
Yeah. Said they didn't really need
some 3-year-old Bramer off the rainforest.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, I told my dad, I said, man, what the heck are we going to do? I said, nobody's going to want a lean, like a select or standard carcass. I said, we might ought to do something. And so that's kind of how we drifted over into limousine. My daughter, Amanda, that she takes care of the trailer company. But anyway, I'd told her, I said, hey, when you go to school, I want you to study business and learn, management, marketing, business, and all that. I said, I can teach you all about, agriculture.
Right. I say you get a better animal science degree on the ranch.
Yeah. So she went to Tyler Junior College, and then she ended up going to A&M and got in her business school. They said, you can't get in, that it's too hard, and we'll put you in ag economics. And she said, no, I'm only in the business school. So anyway, she's pretty hard-headed, and so anyway, she went and graduated, whatever you call it, the cum laude or whatever, with a 4.0.
Definitely something more awesome than me.
Yeah, I didn't have to worry about that when I graduated. But anyway, and then she went to New York City and worked 2 years for Citigroup as an investment banker, and
wow.
she called me and said, "Hey, I'm ready to come back to Texas." And this little different lifestyle up here. And I said, "Well, yeah, you did what I wanted you to do. I just wanted you to, learn some business and stuff like that." And she said, "I think I want to go back and go to the TCU through their ranch management program. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah,
It's got a really good, it's a 1-year program, but it's a good program." And so on one of the trips they took was down to Yoakum to the Beemans. And she called me up on the phone one day and she said, "Hey," said, "there's these cows," and said, "they're red and they look a little like Lipizene. They're not as heavy muscle, but they grade like a Wagyu. And I said, "Well, damn, see if you can get some semen or something." Right. And at that time they weren't selling any semen. The Beemans had just bought them. This was in, I think, 2009 maybe, or 2008, somewhere along there. Mm-hmm. And then, later on, about a year later, we were at a trade show I think it was Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers, or it might have been NCBA, but we had a trailer there. We started doing the trailers in 2003, and then probably by 2008 or 2009, we were taking trailers to the trade shows, cattle, and they had a bunch of the Akaushi cattle there
Oh, really?
at I don't know if it's San Antonio or Fort Worth, but I got to look at some of the cattle, and I liked them, and so anyway, the next year, Bubba Bain and them were. He said, "Hey, we've started selling some of these bulls." So I thought, man, that'd be a great cross, and it looked to me like I asked one of the guys that worked there for Beemans if he thought the Limousine would cross pretty good with Akaushi, and he said, "Man, I think it'd make a really good cross." So what I liked about them was we didn't have any calving problems. They calve about like a Longhorn. I mean, the first year we watched them, and then after that, and that was in 2010, we went and bought 7 or 8 or maybe 9 of the Akaushi bulls and put them on our first calf heifers. And after that first year of watching the heifers, and so since then we hadn't put our heifers up, and we used to check on them during the night, 2 or 3 times during the day and 2 or 3 times at night. And so, yeah, it made life a lot easier. So
that's a huge difference. So are you able to continue to calve unassisted at this point like that?
Yeah, we let our first calf heifers, we treat them just like they're a cow. We don't
just let them
do
calve
anything different than we do with our cow herd. They all calve outside on their own. And so that was one thing I noticed when we were breeding our Limousines. We had registered Limousine, and we treated them just like our commercial cows, and we'd run them, and we'd select the ones we liked the best and put them with the bulls, and then the ones that bred, we would keep those for cows, and the ones that didn't breed would go to the feedlot. And if we had 50 or 60% breed up, we thought that was fantastic, because the Limousine are just a little slower maturing in puberty, at a later date. And as we started crossing the Akaushis and getting more Akaushis in there, it was like unbelievable. I mean, like the heifers would breed up like 95%.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's huge as far as what that does for the bottom line of a ranch.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's significant.
Yeah, it's really huge. And then the cows are fertile, and so yeah, that was kind of a game changer for us.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, all of the carcass quality aside, if a heifer won't become a cow about half the time, versus a heifer becoming a cow nearly all the time, completely changes the economics, or at least the options you have as far as how you go about your replacement heifer program.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Seth Christensen with the Got Any Cows podcast, and I wanted to invite you personally to put a mark on your calendar. So August 27th of 2025, I want to circle on it, and I want you to mark in there, put in CGX auction. Christensen Genetics auction is happening August 27th. Make sure that you're subscribed. Go to gotanycows.com. At the bottom of that landing page, you'll see a subscribe section there where you can fill out and subscribe to our website. That will put you on our mailing list. The second that catalog opens, it'll show you everything that's available to bid on in the August 27th auction. You'll get an email with VIP access. What does that mean? That means you get the first bids. only one person can be in at any given value. If you want to bid on any given auction, only one person can have one bid. You can't have two people in at the same money. If you want the best prices, you need the earliest access. And that's what I'm offering to you as our podcast listeners here on the Got Any Cows podcast, is to subscribe on the Got Any Cows website. We can give you the auction link before anyone else has it so that you can get on the auction, place your bids first, see what's available first, know what you're gonna buy on that August 27th closing date, and you can get the best prices as you place your bids. Every auction, there are some things that sell at or near the opening bid. There are great buys to be had every time. That's the fun of an auction. Some of these things are gonna go way higher than we expected. Some of these things are gonna go way cheaper than I'd let them go private treaty, but that's what makes this fun. There is value there for you as our podcast listeners if you go to gotanycows.com, subscribe to the mailing list, get that VIP access, and hop on and bid early. And then make sure again that on your calendar you have that August 27th date marked in. That auction is going to close at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and it's going to close horse race style finish. So depending on the auction, some close right there close to 6 p.m. Quite often they'll go out towards 7 or 8 p.m. as they close. Every time any lot in the auction has a bid, the entire auction will extend by an additional 5 minutes. And so there's always a lot of activity right at closing. So make sure you're there, make sure you're present, make sure you're watching. Don't miss out on those great buys that there are to be had and some of the neat initial offerings that'll be present in the auction August 27th with Christensen Genetics. Be sure to subscribe and get your link early at gotanycows.com.
I remember at one of the first Akaushi conventions I went to, I think it was at Lost Pines. They had, I think his name, he was a professor at OSU, and he was talking to us, to the group there, and he said, he said, I had this wealthy guy, and we had a herd of Angus cows, and we were just selecting genetically for prime beef. And we worked and we worked and we worked, and we spent 20 years and thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to do that. And he said, you guys can do this with one cross with these Akaushi.
One generation.
He said, if you don't mess it up. And so that was kind of an eye-opening deal.
That's huge.
I think his name was Bob Kropp. I'm not for sure, but I know he used to judge some of the steer shows when I was a kid, showing steers and stuff like that.
I mean, I'm an Angus guy, and I breed both Angus and Akaushi cattle. And I mean, in the national kill mix, there's a lot of weeks it's only 8% prime.
Yeah.
And in an F1 Akaushi, it's like 80% prime is the data that Heartbrand just put out across, I don't know how many, 27,000 carcasses or something, but 80% versus 8%. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but that's that's significant.
It's like a no-brainer. And like at some of the NCBA conventions, some of them, they're talking about how the prime and the choice has been just gradually going uphill in price, and there's being more of a spread between the select and it's the industry's going that direction. So
Yep. Not even Walmart will take your select anymore.
Is that right?
It's choice or better. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just the whole world is going choice and prime, and I know there's not another breed that will do what the Akaushi and what the Wagyu cattle, the red Wagyu or the black, Wagyu, same thing, I guess. But they really will put the marbling in. Yeah, when you can make a limousine grade prime, a F1 limousine grade prime,
that's a big deal.
That's
a big deal. Yeah. When you've gone straight from Laura's lean to prime in one shot, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So as you've looked at them, and I guess walk us through what operations look like today, Jim. So you've made kind of that transition over from primarily limousine over to being primarily primarily Akaushi at this point. What does your production system look like? What does your marketing system look like as far as when you merchandise those cattle?
Yeah. We've always taken them all the way through. I mean, my philosophy's been that, all through the chain, everybody's going to try to make a little bit. The feeder, the cow-calf guy and the feeder, and then the feedlot guy, and then the packer. Yep. We hadn't got to that end deal yet, but we've tried to cut out all the middlemen from the cow calf
calf to the pack.
to selling it to the packer. So
Yeah.
we've pretty much owned them all the way through the last 15, 20, 30 years, I'd say. And I mean, we had some guys. We sold some to Hart Brand the first few years and all, and then later on there was a guy in Iowa that we'd fed some because we did have some black Wagyus that we put on the limousine cows and fed them to for the premium and everything. And there was a guy in Iowa that I met, and so he bought our Akaushis for quite a few years back when the fat market was $1.20. We were selling our Akaushi calves for $2.20. So
Wow.
we're making $1
Wow.
a pound premium,
Which is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, guys will trip over themselves for a 5-cent premium.
Yeah.
10 or 20 is big
Yeah.
money. $1 unheard of.
Yeah.
That kind of a spread on a per pound basis for fat cattle. That's
Yeah.
unheard of.
It didn't take but about 2 or 3 years to where, we got all our cattle. All my life I've been working off of debt, borrowing money from different banks and this and that. But a few years of that'll heal you up in a hurry.
Yeah. You
So,
make some headway like that, you
yeah,
bet.
yeah. So it's really been a game changer for us.
What does it look like as far as you'd mentioned taking them all the way through and being able to sell them to a packer? What's the timeline like? And at what point do they move from the ranch to, do you do any backgrounding versus going straight to the feedlot? I guess at what age do they enter the feedlot specifically? And then how long do you anticipate them needing to be on hard feed before they're ready to sell to a packer?
Yeah.
For your program specifically, because that's different for everybody.
Well, yeah, a lot of it depends on the rain, and like the last 2 or 3 years, we've been in extreme, exceptional drought, and so we'd always wean the calves there, and then we'd put them in traps, and get them used to being held up a horseback and everything, and then we'd turn them back out on grass and leave them till the following fall, and go to the feedlot. And hopefully, if you had a good summer, they'd be weighing 750 to 800 pounds going in the feedlot. But I mean, the last
And they'd be yearlings, I guess.
yeah, they'd
Or
be
little long yearlings.
they'd be long yearlings.
Long
They'd probably
yearlings at
be
that point.
18 months old because we'd calve in the spring, and February, and March, and April, and then we'd be sending them to the feedlot in October.
Okay,
or
so you're
November.
looking at kind of an 18-month. You'd keep them on the ranch, and again, and it's always interesting. Everybody will ask for exact timelines, exact weights, exact protocols, and I always tell them it's just like the how many head per acre question. Like everybody's
Yeah.
resources are completely different, and just like
Yeah.
you said, does it rain or does it not? It's a completely
Yeah.
different feed environment.
I mean, the last 2-3 years, I've had to send them to Oklahoma and put them on wheat pasture. So it's shortened our time up because they'll gain more on wheat
oh yeah,
pasture
they'll gain
than
like
will
the
on
dickens
grass.
on wheat
So-
pasture. You bet.
So yeah, we've probably taken about 6 months off the time frame, which it's been good because sometimes some of those calves that we background on grass for a year like that, or almost a year, they would, they'd be some of them over 30, and we get docked for over 30.
Right.
So,
For getting too old.
Yeah. Getting
So
too old.
when they hit the feedlot, say they're going in as an 18-month-old calf, 750, 800, how long do you anticipate needing to have them sit on feed before they're ready to go to pack?
A lot of the people, they want to feed them 300 days or something like that, but we've done okay just for like 200 days or 250 days, and
That's great.
gotten good, just.
And you're selling more conventional markets.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the last couple of years, I guess, well, you were talking about it earlier. There's so many dairy. They kind of flooded the market a little bit with the Wagyu and breeding them to dairy and stuff. And so the guy I was selling them to, it just, he had more supply than there was demand. And then the economy got a little tough at the same time. And so anyway, we just went back to conventional. In fact, we went to implanting them and just feed them conventional. And hey, I killed a pen last week, and they gained for the steers gained almost 3 pounds in the feedlot, and I think it's 2.9, and they fed for $1.15. Yeah. And then we still had like 95% prime and choice. So Hey, there's nothing wrong with
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
You know,
So you're saying it was your $1.15. Was that your cost per pound or your cost per day or your $1.15 you just
that was
mentioned on your cost?
cost per pound of
Cost
gain.
per pound of gain.
Yeah,
Yep.
cost per pound of gain.
Right.
And but yeah, and if you're keeping them natural, that cost would probably be like $1.65,
Right.
or something like that. So
Yeah.
right now, well, what this is what I keep track of all this. This is one thing I learned. When you got a high market like we do right now, where commodity cattle are bringing 220 a pound,
Oh, yeah.
hey, you don't want to keep them natural.
Right.
You want to do everything you can do to them,
Make
keep
them
them
gain.
rolling, make them
Make them
gain.
gain. You
Yeah,
bet. You bet.
implant them and feed the ruminants. It's going to affect your grade
Sure.
because you're not going to have as many grade prime when you implant them and do all
Right.
that. But hey, it's going to make more dollars to your bottom line.
Well, and I think it's like you said there, as far as capitalizing on those market shifts, because it does happen. The market moves up, the market moves down. Like it's pretty predictable. It climbs for 5, it falls for 5, and that's. Yep. And I think sometimes people have gotten bent out of shape when they say, "Oh, well, I can't get this premium for these calves." Say, well, if commodity money is way above and beyond what the premium ever was prior, maybe just let them trade at commodity money, and then when the thing goes back down, go back to chasing the premium. But that's not a bad way of doing it. And to adjust your marketing strategy to the current market environment is just sound business. Just like you sent Amanda to New York to learn, and just like I think you picked up on a little of what did you do education wise, Jim? Did you do any of that, or did you just learn it all direct from your dad, or on the ranch, or how did you kind of build your acumen that way?
I had full intentions to go to A&M, but I met my wife showing steers at the Houston Livestock Show, and probably 69 or 70. And so we both I went to Uvalde Junior College, and I intended on going on to A&M from there. And I was kind of, pretty young and pretty wild, and I rodeoed and rode bulls and saddle bronc horses, and then we'd started dating before we went to Uvalde, and then after being at Uvalde together, we decided just to get married and go to the ranch. So
You bet.
So we got married in 1974. We celebrated our 51st anniversary, May the 27th, and but we lived at the ranch there at Fort Davis for a year, and then we bought a ranch up in Hudspeth County, up in Cerro Blanca, and it was right out of 100 sections. It was 61,000 acres, and the guy that had it he owned a feedlot or some feeding pens, and he crossed cattle out of Mexico. He was a Mexican cattle trader, and so there hadn't been any cattle on it in 9 years. And my dad said, "Well, you know what? I'm going to let y'all go up there and get all the waters running," because it only had like three. There was on that 100 sections. There was only like three water wells.
Whoa.
There was one good well that would make 10 or 12 gallons a minute, and then there was one at the house that would make about 5. And then on the other side of the ranch, there was a little shallow well. All the wells were like 1,000 foot deep. And
Whoa.
So, yeah, it was, they
Wow.
had big old pump jacks like in the Permian Basin they used to get oil out of the ground. We use them to get water out of the ground.
Wow.
So, and we had probably 80 to 100 miles of pipeline on that ranch. And the guy that had it, he had a little farm to make these little concrete water troughs in the feedlot. And my dad said, "Well, I'll let y'all get all the waters going and let everything, we won't put cattle on there till you're ready, Well, his partner, that I told you that had the feedlot up in Kansas, Les Cooper, he found a deal where we were buying, this was in probably I got married in 74, so this had been 1975. We were buying, he found a good deal on these cows. They had a spur branded on them, and they were Hereford and Angus cows come out of Kansas. They'd been running on live creeks and said water running and everything. And so I think he paid like $125 a pair for these cows. So we started sending truckloads to us down there, and they were used to drinking out of these streams. So they would go up to this little bitty feedlot water trough, and about 3 or 4 cows would drink, and then the next cow would hit her in the butt, and then there goes your float cover, and they'd break the float. So we were like day and night trying to keep water to those cows and everything. And then And then that was before they had cell phones or anything. And so if we got to where we'd carry a bicycle in the damn pickup, so if you broke down, you could ride your bicycle back to the headquarters. But it was kind of a fun time. But I was probably 22 years old running a 100-section ranch. So
you got your education in a hurry. I'd call that a PhD in water management right there, to be trying to keep water to that many animals on that many acres with that kind of water resource.
Yeah, and I think they thought, man, they have sent us to the desert. We'll never get another drink of water. So once we get to this water trough, we better get a good drink. So those little black cows, they would be just bellied out way out to here. And it was quite a deal. And it was like 30 miles from town. And then when you got to that town, there wasn't even a grocery store there. So it'd be about 120 miles to El Paso. That's where we'd go get our groceries and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's a couple things about your story that stand out to me, just from a business standpoint. Just like you mentioned, kind of understanding what the market is and adjusting your production or your point of sale accordingly, and like you mentioned, making that shift from limousine was great for the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was the right fit. The market demanded lean, and so you produced it and you sold it and you did well with that. And then as the market shifted and the market demanded prime, you made an adjustment and you did well with that and picked up some added benefits with the fertility and things like that. Yeah. And then just like you talked about, even now that you're into Akaushi, but the market's sitting at a cyclical high versus at a cyclical low, it's okay to shift management and feed those cattle different and market them through different avenues. And I think that's what, I always figure you can do the exact same thing all the time, and whether or not you're profitable is going to be all over the place. Or you can make some management shifts in accordance with where that market moves, and that can hopefully deliver some consistent profitability. But looking at your operation right now, Jim, and then going into the future, talk to us a little bit about the polled genetics. We've brought in some polled genetics, specifically some heifers from your place that we brought in and worked on, and then we've used a son of your El Padrino bull, Aaron Cooper's Myers Cooper 8117F. We've used in our program and been really pleased with the calves we've gotten. And so I'm very excited about the polled genetics. I very much appreciate your contribution to polled genetics, and even to the bottom side of our pedigrees. One of our key donors, I ought to mention this right out of the gate, going into your polled genetics. We just weaned this year. We just broke our weaning weight record for Akaushi. We weaned a calf at 738 pounds coming off the cow. No creep, no corn, no nothing. Just coming off the cow. And now, granted, coming off the cow in good grass, it did take less than 100 acres of ground. But that calf, his dam, is our 577 donor, and 577 is a daughter of Rancho Espuela Tara 176E. And so the bottom side of the pedigree, your cow would be a granddam, the direct maternal granddam to my record weaning polled Akaushi bull, and he's a homozygous polled bull. Top side of that pedigree being Dos Equis and Rushaw on the top side there. But anyway, walk us through your polled program and kind of what's taking you that direction, and then what you see going forward for your ranch.
Okay. Yeah. The reason I wanted to try to go polled was because I saw what happened in the limousine breed. The polled deal really took off. The limousine are like Akaushi. They have horns. They came out of France with horns, and so I saw kind of what happened in the limousine breed, and so that was the first thing that I geared toward. Was I wanted to kind of maybe try to get ahead of everybody, and we did end up having the first polled 15/16 bull in the breed, El Padrino.
El Padrino.
Yeah.
And a good one at that.
Yeah.
A good one.
Yeah. Yeah. His mom was a 3/4 polled cow, and I think every calf she's had has been polled. And but
anyway. a nice cow too. I saw her when I was out to your place there.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was the reason I kind of wanted to go the polled route. And I had a guy call me, you probably know him, he was from up in your country somewhere, and he was telling me I needed to get El Padrino where they could use him in Australia, because he said they've passed a law over in Australia that you cannot dehorn a calf unless you have a veterinarian there or you give them some deadening. And so,
Wow.
man, if something like that came to the United States,
Well, and truthfully, honestly, I'd bet it's not so much an if as a when. You look
Yeah.
at you look at the direction that politics has gone and the degree they've gotten involved in animal agriculture with a lot of influences from outside of it. I tell you what, if you tell people, hey, the two ways to get these horns off are either A, turn out bull A versus bull B, or B, we got to cut them off.
Yeah.
I can tell you, given the opportunity, what they will mandate.
yeah, and if the screwworms come back, like
Oh,
they're
man.
talking about, yeah,
Yeah,
that would
you
be,
you won't keep cattle alive if you have to dehorn them. Yep.
no,
Yep.
no, you'll only have about 2 months in the year you could dehorn them.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's a life or death scenario, being pulled
Yeah.
versus horned.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. But yeah, and I mean that's kind of the reason that I wanted to work toward polled. It's just a lot easier to dehorn them naturally than it is to go get your breakovers and dehorn them.
Yep. No, that makes sense. What do you see for the future of your program, Jim? Or I guess anything, two different questions. One would be the future of your program, but two would be anything that I've not asked about or not covered that you think you would say to someone that's new to cattle and or new to Akaushi. Any thoughts you'd provide for them and or just any thoughts about the future of your ranch and where you'll take it?
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, the industry's going toward prime and choice, and there's not another breed of cattle out there that can do what the Akaushi can do as far as making your in one cross you can get your quality grade up to choice and prime. It's just unbelievable how
and
much
fertility. Like you
and the
mentioned.
fertility too. That's a big benefit, and the longevity. The El Padrino's mother is like 13 years old, and she's never missed a calf. Had a calf every year,
It's awesome.
and
I love that.
she's an A model. But yeah, and
She looks like she's 6.
yeah.
She's in great shape.
Yeah, but yeah, it's I mean it's I'm really happy with the way what the future looks like for the Akaushi breed and stuff. And the other thing I would mention is well, it's kind of a side note, but like we started the trailer company in 2003 because our country's so big and we got so many roads that we travel over running taking 60 acres per cow or whatever. You're going to be traveling a lot more miles, and the trailers we were using we were having to weld on them all the time and just wouldn't hold up. And so that's why we got started with the Big Ben trailer deal. And then Amanda, my daughter, kind of runs that, but it's been really good. It's been really good to us. So, but yeah, I think the future's bright for the Akaushi breed and the cattle and everything, and in agriculture as a whole. I mean, to feed the world, we're gonna have to step up, and I think we're in a good place. Europe hadn't taken our cattle. They've got all these barriers, like a lot of it's implants. So it's not scientific. They've proved that the implants are safe, but they want to use that as a trade barrier, and I hope Trump gets that. So, I mean, our market's really good now, but it could get even better if they get the European Union opened up, and I guess England's already agreed to start taking some of our beef. So, it's I think we're sitting pretty good right now.
Oh yeah, just a world of opportunity out there, and and I appreciate the work that you've put in and the expertise that you bring to the table. I've always really enjoyed and appreciated with you, Jim, just learning from the experience you have, learning even just about that part of the country. You know what I mean? For me to come down and spend time on your ranch and get my head wrapped around, this is big country. This is like real cowboy stuff. This is the wide open. This is a little Wild West. And it was neat for me to come down down and learn and see those cattle. And I appreciate, the stockman's eye that you bring to it, the experience you bring to it. And then just your contribution specifically to polled genetics. It takes time and it takes generations to take an animal all the way from, in this case, a Limousin base all the way on up to a polled purebred like you did with El Padrino, and even with the Tara 176E female that I ended up having a daughter of. Yeah, and then those heifers that I've worked with you on as well. I just appreciate your contributions there, and I'm excited to work with them within my program. And I'm excited to see, I appreciate you coming up to visit there in Idaho and getting that bull picked out, that King David 919 cross. So your bull would be a full brother to Davy Crockett, and our Davy Crockett bull has sold more semen for us than any bull we've ever had prior. And excited to see what that bull will do as he goes back and blends with those El Padrino bloodlines and other polled bloodlines.
He's on some heifers right now.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm excited for the future as well, and sure appreciate you taking the time to share some thoughts with us. Anything else you'd say to close us out there, Jim?
No, just let it rain.
Awesome. Let it rain. I appreciate you taking the time, my friend.
Yeah, you bet. I enjoyed it.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Got Any Cows podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and visit us anytime at gotanycows.com.